Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the first 2026 episode of the Philly Landlord Guy. I'm your host, Yuriy Skripnichenko, the guy with impossible last name. Just think of me as the Philly Landlord Guy. Look, we're starting the year in a market that doesn't care about your feelings or about your mortgage payments. Right now, Philly is seeing properties sit on the market for 60 to 70 days, sometimes 80 plus days. If you're a landlord with a vacancy right now, you're not just losing the rent, you're losing sleep. The post and pray method on Zillow is dead. To get a unit filled in this market, you need to have a right system. You need to know how to price based on data, not on your ego, and you need to know how to market like a pro. That's why I brought Cameron, the business development manager at TrustArt Realty. He is the guy on the front lines. He knows exactly what makes a tenant to sign a lease faster than 70 days. We're here to share insights and experiences, not legal or accounting advice. Be sure to talk to your attorney, accountant, or professional advisor before making any decisions. Everyone's situation is different. Get the help that is right for you. Hey, Cameron, thank you for joining us. Can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about who you are, what you do, how did you get in real estate, and what is your experience in Philadelphia?
Yeah, thank you, Yuri, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Cameron. I am the business development manager for TrustArt Realty. I've been in real estate myself for over 6 years and doing different roles from property management to leasing to a full-time realtor to now being the business development manager for TrustArt Realty. So my main focus is onboarding new owners, expanding the information of property management services that we have to offer to prospective owners and investors and landlords throughout the Philadelphia area.
Okay, pleasure to have you. But I guess you didn't really have an option to not join this meeting, did you?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it was on the calendar.
Since you have a lot of experience in leasing apartments in the city and you've been named one of the top agents previously with the companies that you were working, so you saw a lot of people coming in and out, and you actually were on the ground. So you were doing showings, you showed the apartments, you spoke to potential tenants, you saw them, you know what they were looking for, you were screening them and talking to landlords about it as well. Right now, we have about 62 days average vacancy time in the whole city of Philadelphia. And in your daily work, what are the biggest red flags that you see that cause a property to sit maybe too long on the market? And why do you think this time is getting higher and higher now?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Yuri. For me, honestly, I think there's a lot of different factors that go into it, but the big one for me is the quality of the marketing. You do see sometimes where you do have a self-managed landlord or investor that only puts up or posts one or two photos and doesn't really include a description of the property and its features. Some things of not including a lot of those photos, along with not including any videos or any floor plans. Just you want to provide as much information as possible to the prospective tenant so they know what they're getting themselves into. But the lack of marketing has been something that I have seen, which does leave the prospective tenant very confused or a little hesitant to even reach out to schedule that showing or reach out when it is available or when can I move in, things like that. So not having good quality marketing or any quality photos or videos or floor plans is a big deterrent, which can cause increase in delay finding a qualified tenant. Another thing would be similar to what I was talking about with the lack of marketing would be just like next steps. Where can they apply? If they have a question, who can they contact? Not having that can also leave a tenant kind of wondering what are the next steps for me if I want him interested in moving forward with the property. So it's always important to include that in a description at the end saying, hey, if you have questions, reach out or send an email or give us a call. Or if you can also include the application link in the description, that would be great as well. But those are some factors. But the big thing for me would probably be the slow response time. So we do see a lot of potential renters that are interested in a property and they're looking at other property management companies or other self-managed properties and they're reaching out asking for questions. Hey, are pets allowed? What's the water bill per month? Is there central air? Things like that, and they don't hear back. Not hearing back is like a telltale sign. That's like kind of a red flag. And I don't really want to rent from somewhere or work with a potential property manager or an owner that they can't answer a simple question when it's about their property, and showing your interest as well. So not getting back to somebody can really be a big deterrent, and it's really important. The speed to the lead is very crucial in Philly just because of the amount of competition in the area. There's so many row homes, new construction, townhomes, anything you could think of. I'm sure you could find it right across the street or a mile up the street, 2 miles up the street. There's just so many options. So it's really important to be in the best advocate for the property, be the best advocate for the tenant, and get back to them as soon as possible. Because the sooner you get back to them, the sooner they're going to want to potentially work with you and schedule a tour and hopefully apply.
So what kind of things do you want to have in the listing description when you post a property? You already mentioned that if there is an application link, include that, include the ways how they can contact you, that you actually reply to them. And what is this time that you would say a potential tenant expect to get a response back from the listing agent or from the owner who owns the apartment for rent?
Yeah, those are good questions. I think description wise, you should definitely include kind of, it's almost a time for you, an opportunity for you to brag about the property. So you can highlight all of its features, whether the kitchen was renovated last year, or we just added a new roof, or there's central air now, there's a finished basement, outdoor space. Including those kind of keywords is really important, and it'll really interest and attract the right tenant who are looking for those types of things. Not including it and then also not having good quality photos leaves the tenant in limbo, unsure if the property has those features, and most likely they're not going to really do too much of the research, and they'll most likely just move on to the next one if it's a rental, find something very similar. Yeah, so I think having those types of keywords is really important.
Okay. So for us as management company, we have multiple listings at any given moment, and we have a lot of different reports. We see where each lead is coming from. So we have a lot of tracking around that. So we definitely have more information that the regular landlord would. And for us, and not just for us, for our region in general, Zillow accounts for about 80% of all of the leads received coming for a property that we have for rent. That's including us listing every single property on MLS, which a single owner or landlord, if you're not licensed agent, you cannot do that unless if you use an agent or a property management company. Again, being or having all of that, we still have about 80% of leads coming from Zillow. Where else would you recommend a landlord to list a property besides Zillow to get better applicants for
Yeah, Zillow does seem like it is the main source, but there are potential other options. Like us at TrustArt Realty, we do use social media. So using things like Facebook, LinkedIn, even TikTok, those types of social media third-party sites can attract other potential clients that you didn't even think of, who may not have been looking on the traditional Zillow sites. They may have just been scrolling on their phone and randomly that popped up, and maybe it's not for them, or maybe it's a family member or a friend that they can just share it with, and then that kind of just expands your exposure. It just really helps putting it out to as many markets and putting it out to as many channels as you can to try to help increase the possibility of somebody moving into your property.
So when you sit down with a new landlord, how do you do a market analysis? What is the number one piece of data that they usually miss or ignore but should be paying attention to?
Yeah, for CMAs, I think the biggest number one factor is the location. Philadelphia is very block by block, and there's so many different zip codes, so many different neighborhoods. It really changes very quickly, and people don't really realize that. So being very close to a border of a zip code that leads into another could potentially change the price point of your rental. The other thing too would be just very traditional things like number of bathrooms, having an extra half bathroom. Some people realize, oh, they're looking at the number of just bedrooms or just the square footage, and you don't realize that maybe your subject property only has one bathroom, but he's looking at other ones that have 1.5 or two full baths with 2 showers. So that can fluctuate with the price and kind of decrease in value on the property that landlords don't really look into as high in detail. Some other things are just features. So in-unit laundry, central air, finished basement, parking. All of those types of things are some key features that can really help boost your property. And then it's really important to ensure that if your property has that, that if you're looking at a CMA, that the other properties you can see that have closed at a certain price point, you can compare and contrast and see, oh, that one does have parking, so we can price it maybe a little bit similar. Oh, that one did have a renovated kitchen similar to ours, things like that, as well as the square footage. Looking into all of those things are really important. And I think as a landlord, you don't want to go into it alone. You definitely want to have somebody that can assist and help you out and guide you and give you the real numbers, and ensure that you're also looking at updated information and recent information. You don't want to look at comps that were over a year ago or 2 years ago, even though it was like right across the street. You want to make sure it's at least within about 5 to 6 months max. So you want to make sure it's all recent, so it's pretty up to date with the market.
Yeah, especially if you were watching the market for the last year, you saw that we, instead of having rent hikes, we have rent flatten or actually going down in a lot of different areas of Philadelphia. And talking about these different features, as you mentioned, in-unit laundry, parking, finished basements, or additional half bath, does it increase your rent amount or it reduces the time on the market? How would it go about it? Would you increase the price if, let's say, you have a similar property across the street that's 3 bedroom, 1 bath, and you have an extra bathroom? Would you keep the same price just to be able to attract more potential tenants and rent it faster? Or you would increase the price and maybe potentially increase the time on the market? Was that what would be your suggestion here?
I would always recommend to price it accurately. I think it's always in the owner's best interest to find tenants as soon as possible. You don't want a property sitting vacant. You don't know what any deferred maintenance could be going on. You don't know anything that could be going on in terms of if you have a mortgage as well. So you could be losing money if you haven't paid off on your investment in full. So even though it does look like a nice potential to price it a little bit higher than the one across the street, even though it is pretty much the same, there's not much of a difference. Pricing it accurately, in my opinion, it is always the best route to go. You want to stay competitive with the market. I always tell owners that you can price it higher if you want, but ultimately it's your loss in a way that you're losing time on the market. All of those prospective renters that have a budget of $100 less than what the market price is or what the property is rented for, they're just going to walk right past it. They're not even going to schedule a showing because it's out of their budget. And that's not even including utilities, a potential pet fee, moving costs, things like that. So pricing it accurately is always, in my opinion, the better way to go. The other thing too is when it is a higher market or higher demand in the spring and summer months, if you're pricing it more competitively, you may even get yourself in a bidding war where you may have two tenants that are really interested in the property, and one's willing to, instead of a 12-year lease, be willing, or 12-month lease, be willing to sign for a 24-month lease, or maybe even pay an extra $50 to $100 a month. So the benefit would, in my opinion, would be to always try to price it as accurately as possible, unless you have the big bucks and are willing to let it sit for an extra 3 months and you don't care. But if you want somebody in there as soon as possible to reduce vacancy, I would always recommend pricing it accurately rather than higher.
How me as a landlord, how can I go and do market analysis myself? Or how can I figure out what is my market rent right now? So let's say I have this 3 bedroom house that I had rented for, I don't know, last 6 years. Now it's vacant. I just did turnover. It's ready to go.
Mhm.
And I have no idea what to rent it for. Usually as a landlord, I want to get as much as possible. And I know that rates are crazy, my mortgage payments are crazy, insurance going up. Doesn't mean that I would just take my payment for mortgage, insurance, and whatever else expenses I have, and that's going to be my minimum base for the rent plus, I don't know, $50 to have on top on that. Or how would I determine that? How do I find that number?
Yeah, it's always, in my advice, I would say to reach out to a professional, reach out to a realtor. You can't always trust the Zestimates, the rent estimates on Zillow and apartments.com. Those are not always accurate, and sometimes they're priced way higher. Investors, landlords do get a little bit more excited. And once they see that number and they haven't really run or ran the comps that a realtor would do in the past 6 months and see within a mile or 2 mile radius, how many homes very similar to that, what are they actually renting for? How long did they take to get rented? So you definitely want to get in contact with somebody that you can trust, that is familiar with the market, especially with the area, has experience dealing with renters in that area, know what they're looking for, be realistic with the owner and letting them know, hey, you're $200, $300 over what realistically the past 6 months of comps have showed. You can try for that higher price. Most likely it will take a little bit longer to find somebody. I- So I always recommend finding somebody that you can trust and ask them, that hopefully is a realtor, can run those numbers, sit down with you and have an honest conversation with you about it.
How do you find that the trusted realtor or real estate agent or a property management company or whoever can give you that information? How do you find them? You mentioned something which is resonates with me a lot, is that you need to have somebody who knows the area and knows the tenant. So if somebody is working in Center City only and you asking them about a tenant in Parkwood, they would have no idea what the tenant base like, what the properties look like, how long it takes to rent it, or what kind of listing you need to have, or things like, do you need to have the unit staged for the pictures, or you can have AI staging done, or you don't need to have any staging. So how do you find that person who can help you in specific area that you're looking at?
Yeah, I think it's really good for an owner or an investor to do their due diligence and do the research specifically by their neighborhood or by their zip code, looking for a trusted realtor or property manager who has done rental sales or dealt with actual clients and they have the proof for it. So I think it's beneficial to interview your property manager or your realtor before you just sign that agreement, someone that has experience in that local area, because like you mentioned and what I mentioned before, every zip code in Philly is very different. Center City is very different to Parkwood, like you mentioned, Somerton, Bustleton, all those areas compared to South Philly or West Philly. You definitely want to have somebody in your corner that has done those types of deals in those areas and is familiar with the streets, with the schools nearby, with the parks, knowing what the potential prospective renter wants and being realistic and what the potential price point is really beneficial and can always, like I mentioned, help in the long run so you're not having a property sit vacant for a really long time.
What are your thoughts on the listing price in general? Is it better to list at the higher end and test the market for a couple of weeks and then just adjust the pricing accordingly? Or it's better to price accurately from day one and put it on the market to have it rented faster?
Yeah, like I said before, I think it's always beneficial to price accurately. You want to increase competition. You're not really going to get as much competition with a higher price point. The other thing too is if you as the investor have a mortgage on the property, you have a monthly payment that you got to pay. If you have it priced higher, hoping that I'm going to offset my mortgage payment if I get a higher price, but that's all good and fair, but you actually have to have a tenant in the property that's going to pay that higher price every single month on time. So I think it's always beneficial to price accurately with the market, with the area, run the comps within the past 5 to 6 months, and be realistic. And you want somebody in there that's going to be responsible with the property, keep it in good condition, pay on time. You want to price it fairly. You don't want to price it out of the wazoo and you're just hoping that some rich, successful doctor, whoever is just going to find it and be willing to pay that. So I think it's always beneficial to price accurately, especially when the spring, summer rolls around, like I said before, when it is more competitive, more leases are ending in that time frame. If you are pricing accurately, that's going to increase your demand. Hopefully you will find somebody within that, for example, that $1,500 budget, instead of you trying to price it at $1,795 when that's not realistic and not within comps. So to reduce vacancy, reduce the headache and stress, I always say to price accurately, unless you have the deep pockets and you're okay with it sitting vacant for a while. But especially with the timing of year right now, and like we mentioned earlier in the call, that it's about 62 days average on market to find a tenant. So that's with pricing it accurately, you're going to be at 6 months, or sorry, at 60 days. If you aren't pricing it accurately, you're already going to be most likely above 60 days, and you don't want to be in the 90-day to 100+ days. And especially if you have a mortgage, you're going to be in a big hole. You want to price accurately.
And right now, as you say, if you on average have 2 months vacancies that you have to plan for, and if you price $100 more and that adds additional months on the market, that's just going to kill you. It's perplexing for me sometimes when I talk to landlords or I listen to some podcast or somebody is posting some post that it's better to have it on the higher end and see how it goes. Maybe you get lucky and maybe you're able to rent it out, or maybe, hey, I just upgraded my kitchen, so now I'm going to get $200 more. It doesn't work that way all the time. It depends on the market. And with our current market, I would say you need to be as aggressive with pricing as you can. And a simple explanation from you would be, if your rent is over $1,200 a month, which is most of the rents would be over $1,200 a month, just divide that by 12 months. And that is at least $100 that you're losing each month for the property not being rented. So if your property should be rented at $1,200 and you list it at $1,300, and it takes an additional month sitting on the market, it's exactly the same as if you were to rent it a month sooner for $1,200.
I agree with you completely. I think it's always good to price aggressively. You want to create the sense of competition for the property. It's not always great when I'm informing an owner or a landlord that the property's been on the market for 30 days and it's overpriced. We've only had one showing. And they're like, oh, we want to continue with this price. We're probably 30 days from now going to be in the same position. Compared to somebody else where it's priced accurately, I can report back to them in 2 weeks and say, hey, we already have applications. We already had 10 showings at this point. So it's always good to increase the volume. You want to give as many people the chance to see the property. You want to price it accurately to give them that chance. And more often than not, you will find a qualified tenant who will end up applying.
Yeah. And it's always so perplexing for me when landlords do not want to reduce. They just want to keep the property on the market as long as possible for the price that they hoping to get. And in my mind, the only reason why you would want to do it, if you want to get some kind of loan on the property or mortgage where it's depending on the rent amount that you're getting from your property. If you're getting below a certain amount of rent, maybe you will not be able to get that loan. Maybe in that case, it makes sense. But again, if the property is sitting on the market for a few months and you cannot get that loan anyway, does it make sense? Probably not.
Yeah.
And with all of this, we are in a very complicated market right now. We have a lot of new inventory on the market. We have all of this new built apartment complexes that offer a lot of amenities. We have all of this houses that is interesting now, that people were selling them, that they were not able to sell them at the price that they wanted to get, and now they're taking them off the market for sale and they put them on the market to rent. So with all of this like influx of new units on the market almost in every single area of the city, how do you see, how have tenants expectations also changed? What do they expect to see in the property? What are they looking for, or what kind of property conditions should be to be able to attract the best tenant?
It really also does depend on the area, the location, the zip code, all that stuff. But honestly, ever since COVID, people want to use their home as their all-inclusive resort. They want to use it for their office. They want to use it for their gym. They want to use it for storage. They're looking for everything. So that is why a lot of these landlords and investors are investing in these high-rise complexes and are going to offer a rooftop deck, and there's going to be a convenience store on the first floor, and there's going to be a gym, extra storage, there's going to be parking. All of those things nowadays are a lot of things that people are looking for as a renter. More so, I would say, like younger professionals, younger couples, younger families. But other than like the amenities, I would say people are looking for, especially younger families, are looking for the in-unit laundry. They are looking for central air, updated kitchen, potentially an outdoor space if they have pets. The other thing too, for me, that I've seen a lot is storage. A lot of people have a lot of things, and other than they're looking at the kitchen, they're looking at the bedrooms, they're also really looking at the closet space. how am I going to fit all of my clothes in here? How am I going to fit my shoes in here? How am I going to fit my coats in here? So I have in the past have had people pass on properties just because it didn't have closet space. So having storage for me is something that in my own house, I value as well. You don't want to rent an additional storage locker or storage unit at a third party site and have to drive somewhere to gather your belongings. So especially if it's like either a condo or even just a single family home, if you're developing or doing a new construction, you want to ensure that it does have good closet space in each of the bedrooms. You want to ensure it has a coat closet or some sort of additional storage space in the basement as well. Just because, like I mentioned, people want to ensure that they can do pretty much everything in their home nowadays. They want to ensure that they can work from home. They want to ensure that they can potentially get a workout in from home. They want to ensure they could read a book outside if possible, all of those things. So I think it's really important to look out for those if you are considering increasing your rental price points or constructing a new property. But I would say that storage is really important. And people will either move forward with that property because of that or pass on it because it doesn't have it.
Having the storage or adding the storage units or closets to the property, it's not that easy, right? You may want to do it if you do a rehab or if you do a new construction. But is there something that the regular landlord who just has a regular 3-1 townhome in Philly, is there something that they can do at the time? Let's say right now, we're in January 2026. I have a tenant moving out from my regular row home. What can I do to make sure that I market this home better to the potential tenants? Obviously, I cannot build closets in it. It's impossible. It's possible if I want to
Yeah.
spend a lot of money. But in general, it's not something that I would do.
Even if it's not updated, or a lot of listings I have seen personally is it could be like an older row home, which most likely does have an unfinished basement, and they don't include that photo in the listing because it's unfinished and they don't think it's that nice. And then in the description, they may not include it either. But I would recommend, if you don't have obviously the capacity to build an extra storage closet or things like that, to ensure that you are including that unfinished basement or that finished basement in the listing photos, so tenants can say, oh wow, it may not have a lot of closets, but I can store a lot of my belongings seasonally in the basement. Include that there is ample storage in the listing description as well. Having those things, it doesn't really take much effort, just one extra click of a camera and one extra sentence you have to type in your listing description. But having those things, even though it may not be the most pretty and fancy, it's not finished, who cares? People want to see that they can still have that option to store stuff. So I would recommend ensuring you include that in the listing description, as well as add it in your photography, or have your photographer make sure that they get down there to take that photo too.
We're talking about pictures for the listing. So I often see that landlords post just a couple of pictures or just an exterior picture or a picture of, I don't know, a wall from a house and not much else. What kind of pictures would you recommend a landlord to post, like of every room or every bedroom or just kitchen and bathroom? What type of pictures and how those should look like?
Yeah, you always want to have quality photos. You don't want any of those blurry photos where like your thumb is covering the camera, or you're taking the pictures yourself and you're in the mirror and they can see you in the mirror. I've seen all of those on Zillow. You want to make sure it's professional and quality. Obviously, if you don't have the marketing costs or the budget to hire a professional photographer, you can use a lot of these phones nowadays are very high quality. So you can use your smartphone, use a tripod and hold it up and get the right angle and do those types of things if you don't have the budget. But first option would probably be to hire a photographer or get a nice camera and figure out how to do it yourself, or use your smartphone. But in terms of like the number of photos or where to take the photos, I would always recommend, you want the exterior, you want to see what it looks like out front, and you almost want to take the photos as if you're like walking through the home yourself. So, usually when you first walk in, you'll see the foyer or the living room, kitchen. You want multiple photos of both of those. If it has an updated kitchen, you want to ensure it has you should take the photo of the kitchen island and the newer appliances, the dishwasher. If it also has a backyard or any type of outdoor space, you do want to include that as well. That's a very big plus, especially these days. People want to have their own private outdoor space. And then, like I mentioned just now, you want to add the basement photos as well. If you're able to organize it a little bit or sweep it up, clean it up if it's unfinished, that'll really help as well. Tenants want to see that they have the storage and the space that they need to fit all of their belongings. Bathroom pictures, you only probably need one or two. If there's multiple bathrooms, you want to just make sure you have photos of all of the bathrooms, half bath or full bathroom. And then bedrooms, I would say one or two. The other thing that I always recommend to include, if it does have laundry, make sure you're taking the photo of the laundry. That is probably like one of the top questions tenants or prospective tenants will ask if it's not there. So, you don't want to just keep answering the same question over and over again. Why not just include it and include it in the description so tenants know, hey, I see the photo of the laundry. I see it's in the description as well. That checks off what I'm looking for. Yeah, I think those are some things that are really important. Tenants just want to see pictures that are very similar to what they would hopefully also see in person when they see the property. They want to make sure it's pretty similar. They don't want to be surprised by anything. They want to make sure that it's pretty accurate. So I would recommend high quality photos, smartphone if you don't have the budget, camera if you do, or hire a photographer, either or. But there are multiple options you can take to ensure you have professional, high quality photos.
You mentioned something when you take pictures for the listing, just imagine that you're walking through with somebody through the house and snap a picture of every space that you have. But at the same time, you want to have them look a little bit more professional than when you just do a selfie with a window in the background or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And yes, you're right. Most of our modern cell phones, they have great cameras. You can do a lot of different pictures and also videos. I would not recommend doing wide lens pictures that people do sometimes for smaller spaces like bathrooms or something else. Yeah, it's very confusing for tenants when they look at those pictures because they look like it's a big space when it's a little corner closet or something. So I would avoid those as well. But how does having a video walkthrough changing the listing, or does it help, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think the video walkthrough is just like a sneak peek or like a preview. So, the tenants can visually see what the property looks like as if they were at the tour. So it gets them excited about the property. They can, like I mentioned, you want the media and the marketing to tell a story about the property. You want to walk through it, envision yourself, envision putting the furniture there. You want to envision putting the sofa there. You want to make sure everything fits. So having the walkthrough, I think, is just like an extra bonus, and it can help answer some questions that tenants may already reach out to you and they may have watched the walkthrough and they can, oh, now I can see that it does have in-unit laundry once I go down the basement in the walkthrough, or oh, I can see that it does have a little small backyard and I can fit our outdoor couch there. Things like that. You just want people to be as prepared as possible, and you don't want to hide anything. You don't want for them to be surprised on the tour and they're like, oh, I didn't know that was there. Or I didn't realize that wasn't there. Yeah, so I think just having all of that there ensures that the tenant or prospective tenant is serious about moving forward. I think it also mitigates any people from just window shopping once they physically are, not physically, once they're virtually seeing the walkthrough and seeing the photos, and then from there they can see what the property really looks like. More often than not, they're pretty serious and they want to schedule a tour and they want to move forward. So just having all of that extra information and those extra resources can really help, and hopefully help you find a qualified tenant.
So at what point would you say a DIY landlord should stop trying to do their own leasing and bring in a professional? That can be a leasing agent or that can be a property management company. Do they need to test it out for a month themselves? And if there is no luck or they cannot get a good qualified tenant, then they can engage with somebody? Or what is your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's probably beneficial to reach out to a professional from day one, especially also if you are doing this as like a side hustle or you already have a full-time job or have a family or kids. Once you do list that property, it does start to get very busy, and you do want to have somebody that you can trust to help you out with this. So someone like us at TrustArt Realty, we can step in, get you the comps, get you the CMA, get your property leased and managed as soon as possible. The only way I would say is to not get somebody involved like us is if you have somebody that you knew, like it's, oh, my brother Jimmy is going to move in, or a colleague or whatever. That's totally fine. But to reduce vacancy, reduce days on market, you really want to have somebody that knows the process, also that knows the process locally in Philadelphia, understands what is needed to successfully rent your property. You don't want to do it alone, thinking you checked all of your boxes when things randomly can happen. So I think it's always beneficial to get in contact with a professional as soon as possible, because you don't want the property to sit vacant, and that can always lose you money. So that's no fun for anybody.
What is the difference between a listing agent or realtor and a property management?
Yeah. So leasing agent or realtor, they're most likely just going to help you find the tenant, handle the showings. And then once the tenant's placed, their job is done, and they're most likely just going to move on to the next client. Compared to property management, like us at TrustArt Realty, we are full service. So we will handle the front end of doing the marketing and the showings. We have a great leasing team. We will do the tenant screening. And the good thing about us is once you have that tenant that is placed, we will continue to manage the property, handling all day-to-day communication with the tenant, rent collection, maintenance. All of those things we will handle for the owner, and it's very beneficial. Like I mentioned, people could have other full-time jobs, family, children. It's a headache. On top of that, you have a tenant reaching out to you at 2 a.m. about some leak, or they're telling you that they're late on rent for another week, and you still got to go to work the next day. Having somebody like a professional property manager like TrustArt Realty is pretty important, in my opinion. Those are the differences. But if you're looking for full service property management compared to just finding a tenant, it depends on what you're looking for. Whereas, like I said, a leasing agent, realtor is just going to handle the front end and then just move on to the next person, compared to a full service property management team.
I would also say that if you are going with a listing agent to list your property, to show it, screen tenants, you need to make sure that they know what they are doing, that it's not just a regular agent who just decided to have this small side hustle of listing your house and getting a quick buck for it. They need to understand all of the rules and regulations. They need to understand all the landlord-tenant laws in the city of Philadelphia, because if they're doing something incorrectly, you as a landlord can get in trouble for that. And even if they're a licensed agent, it doesn't mean that they know what they're doing. They may be selling houses all the time, but they may have no idea how to lease a house. They may not know what kind of documents you need to sign to lease a house. So if you go in with an agent, just make sure that you do your research and that the person that you select actually is knowledgeable and they know what they're doing on the market. So say finally I have my property listed. It's everywhere. It's on Zillow. It's on social media. I have my video walkthrough. I took great pictures with my cell phone. Can you just share what is your way of converting leads into a lease?
I think the big thing is the speed to the lead. So you want to respond to the lead, their question, or whether they're trying to schedule a tour. You want all of that happen ideally as soon as possible, within the first hour, 2 hours of when they reached out. You want to get back to them that same day, no matter what, because most likely somebody that is looking, they're looking at multiple other rental properties and other opportunities. So if you don't get back to them, they're most likely moving on to their next option. But that would be the number one, the speed to the lead. Make sure you're getting back to them as soon as possible. Conducting the tour, answering any questions that they have. Screening the tenant would be the next step. Once you do encourage them to apply and you get that application, screening them, hopefully approving them if they are quality in terms of credit, income, all of those good things. And then next would be signing the lease, collecting move-in funds, and starting the process all over again. So it really is it's a cycle. You want to respond to the tenant as soon as, or prospective tenant as soon as possible. Ensure you're answering all those questions. See if there's anything that's holding them back from applying. See if there's anything that we can do to try to help them out. Get the application, screen the applicant, collect the move-in funds, sign the lease, and repeat the cycle over again. So it's a pretty tried and true process. We've been doing it for a pretty long time.
Yeah, Yeah, especially the process of screening tenants can get complicated, and it's also can be very highly regulated in city of Philadelphia. So you need to make sure that you understand how you can and cannot screen tenants. And we actually have an episode on this a few months back. So if you want to, you can go and check it out. But if a landlord has a vacant unit right now, what is the single most effective thing that they can do to get it rented faster?
Yeah, I think the best option would be is to make sure you're marketing it on all sites. Obviously, it will go on Zillow and it'll syndicate to all the other third parties, but it's beneficial, like we have mentioned throughout the conversation, is to get in touch with a professional. You want to ensure that it is on the MLS as well. A lot of people do use a realtor, even for just renting a property. You'd be surprised. There are a lot of leasing agents that do focus just on rentals. So you want to ensure that the property is listed on the MLS. And like we did mention before, you do also want to ensure it is on social media as well, just to expand its exposure. But yeah, I would say that those are marketing wise, those are really good things. But pricing wise, like we have mentioned, pretty much it's like the theme of the call is to price accurately. You don't want the property to be sitting vacant. If you have a mortgage, you are going to be losing money on the property if you're trying to get that certain price point that is already above the market rate. So pricing it accurately, getting good marketing, and hiring a professional is probably like the three top things I could probably recommend. But doing all those things doesn't necessarily guarantee you're going to get somebody right away. But the other thing that's really important is the speed to the lead. With competition in Philadelphia, 60 plus days on market right now, you can imagine you can get excited that you get a lead. That doesn't necessarily mean that lead's going to turn into a lease. You just really need to stay on top of them. It gets very competitive, especially this time of year, because it is a little bit slower. If you do get that lead, you want to make sure you're holding on to them and trying to get them into one of your properties before you lose them, or if you don't respond, because they're going to be moving on to the next option, given the amount of inventory in the area.
Cameron, thank you for all of this great information. Hopefully it's helping somebody out there trying to rent their property. But if somebody wants to reach out to you, or what is the best way to find you?
I appreciate it, Yuri, but I would say best way to get in contact, you can call me. I can be reached at 267-465-6564. The other thing would be also my email, Cameron@TrustArtRealty.com. You can also check out our website, TrustArtRealty.com. We have a bunch of reviews on our website, owner testimonials, full links to our services, and all the pricing and all the good things that we have to offer.
Sounds good. Thank you, Cameron.
Thanks, Yuri.
All right, that's a wrap on our today's episode. If you're listening to this and your property is still sitting vacant, you have no excuses left. Cameron gave you the blueprint. Check your pricing, fix your photos, and tighten up your follow-up. If you're tired of chasing tenants and you want a team that already have systems dialed in, reach out to Cameron at TrustArt Realty. He's going to help you. His contact information is below. You can also go to trustartrealty.com and just click schedule consultation on top. It is free. You can get your market analysis for your property and you don't need to pay anything for it. As always, keep your properties clean, your tenants screened, and your numbers tight. I'm Yuriy Skripnichenko, and this is the Philly Landlord Guy. I'll catch you on the next one.